Hey guys, Super Dave here. As always, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel so you can follow me. Give me the thumbs up if you like what you hear. If you have any questions or comments, ask them below and I'll take the time to answer them for you. What I want to talk about today is the biggest deal of my life. The reason I'm going over this big deal for you is not to brag. I want you to understand my thought process and why I would take so much risk in 1 year and buy so much property and take on so much debt. I want you to understand how I've been rewarded by this later in life. This happened back when I was 40 years old. Currently, I am 54 years old. And what happened was I heard about a guy in my town, his name was Floyd, and a friend of mine said he had a group of properties that he was willing to sell and he was willing to do some owner financing. So I had never met Floyd before, so I searched him out. I figured out who he was, I got his phone number, and I just called him up. You've got to take that first step. I invited him to lunch and we sat down and had a meal together. And that was my first initial contact. If you see somebody out there or hear about somebody out there who has property and you hear that they're willing to sell, take that first step. Make that initial contact. At the time I met Floyd, he owned 50 houses and he owned a 31 unit apartment building. So I found him, I called him, and I asked him if he was interested in selling his property. And he said he was, which was great news for me. And to this day, he is a friend of mine and I have bought multiple properties from him. So what I did was I decided to buy the apartment building first. So I met with Floyd, we went over to the property and he walked me through. Well, it was an old motel and it was a month-to-month rental property and it was overwhelming to me. And to be honest with you, when I went home that night, I didn't think I was going to buy it. It needed a lot of work and it was a large project and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. So what I did was I called my father-in-law. He's a very successful man and I really appreciate his opinion. So I sat him down first and I said, Bill, should I buy this apartment building? It's a big move for me. I'm 40 years old. It's going to take up a lot of my reserves and I'm very nervous about it. And I don't know if I should do it. And this is what he said to me. I can tell you what you should do and I can tell you what you shouldn't do. And what you should do is stay within your box. He said, David, you're into real estate, you understand rentals, and this falls into that box. What he said was, what you shouldn't do is do things you don't have experience in and trying new ventures in a large scale like that. So I listened to what he said. His advice was, you're in real estate, you understand rentals, go ahead and go for it. So that gave me the push to move forward. So I made the appointment and I walked through the property. The property was a month-to-month building. Every tenant in the building lived in their particular efficiency month by month. Well, the first year I decided to go ahead and keep all the tenants in the building and do a light renovation to it and kind of keep the concept the same. Well, after 12 months, it just didn't work out. People weren't paying rent on time, they weren't caring for my property, and people would move in and then they would realize they could stay in the property for 90 days. And it would take me that long to move somebody out. So after 12 months of grinding and keeping the month-to-month concept, I made a drastic change. I moved everybody out of the building. So now I had an empty building. I put more money into the building and I renovated it and created a model unit. And I decided to change the entire concept. Well, I live near a college town, so I decided to turn them into student efficiencies. I made them a little bit nicer, I changed the floor plan a little bit, and I catered to the college student. And with that new concept, I was able to put people on a 12-month lease. And this fell more into what I was comfortable with. I would sign a 1-year lease, I would get a security deposit, and I would do my normal concept of a year-to-year lease. And that was the best move I made. So now I have the building full, it's full of students. They live there 1 year at a time. My concept was if I could rent 15 units, I could cover my mortgage and I could get through to the next year. Well, I ended up renting the entire building and I have never looked back. I have had no vacancies since 2007. This property has been one of my best investments and the best moves I ever made. Well, it is true what they say, risk and reward. I took a huge risk. I bought a property that needed work, that needed a concept change. I used up a lot of my reserves to renovate and to fix up the building. Well, I'd like to speak a little bit to the actual deal and the numbers involved in buying this property. When I met with Floyd, the first thing I asked when we got to the property, obviously, was, how much are you asking for the property? Well, the number he quoted me was $485,000. Honestly, I thought that was a great deal, but I was not about to let him know that. So what I said to Floyd was, if you will give me some owner financing, I will give you full price for your property. Well, luckily, Floyd understood owner financing. So here's the deal we put together. I told him I would give him $50,000 down and he would owner finance the rest of the property for me. What made me excited about the building was it had 31 units in it. Well, that was a large scale number that I knew I could make a profit off of. So when I talked to Floyd, it was important to me to get good terms. So I negotiated a good interest rate. At that time, it was 4.5% interest. And I wanted to spread it out over a long period of time. So I did it over a 30-year period to lower my payment. So Floyd agreed to my terms and I moved forward with the project. When I went to Floyd, he said he was asking $485,000 for the entire property. Well, it sounds low, but it needed a lot of work. I ended up putting $100,000 of my own money into the building and doing a complete renovation to it. Well, here I am today in 2021, and last year I did an appraisal on the building. I did a refinance and it appraised for $1.4 million. I'm so glad I took the risk. I'm so glad I put the work into the building and I created the best property that I own today. I get the most cash flow off this 31 unit apartment building than any other property I own. I've got more equity in this building than any other properties that I own. It's the best investment I ever made and I almost walked away from it. So it's calculated risk. Take your time, talk to the professionals, make a good decision, and that's what I did. And I'm standing here today and I'm so glad that I took the risk and now I'm feeling the reward. Now, an important concept to making this whole deal work was the first time I went to look at the property, it was in rough shape. It smelt bad, it looked bad, and it was a rough looking building. Most people would have walked away, and I almost did. It was not visually pleasing to the eye. But a special talent you need to develop is seeing that property as the finished product. So you need to step back, don't look at the furniture, don't look at the dirty clothes, you need to look at the walls, you need to look at the structure, you need to look at the building and see what that building could be if you could renovate it. And I call it goggles. You have to look through your special goggles and see the finished product. And if you're not able to do that, you're going to walk into properties and you're going to think they need too much work and you're going to walk away from great deals. The uglier and the smellier, the better. So in closing, a point I wanted to make. I want to make sure that you're listening to the right people. It's very important that you listen to somebody who has experience and has been through the ups and downs of the market for 30 years. I've been doing this since the early 90s. I've been through a recession. I've been through a pandemic. I've been through interest rates going up and down. I've experienced a lot. So it's important to listen to somebody who's been through a lot over a long period of time, and that's me. I have a ton of experience. I've built houses. I've rented houses. I've been a real estate agent. I have done everything real estate related for close to 30 years, and I'm still doing it now. I'm the type person you need to listen to. I've got great information. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to mentor and I want to share my information. I've already made it to the other side. I've already created success for myself. So I want to give information to you to help you become a successful person. Well, I really appreciate your time. Again, if you could subscribe to my channel, give me the thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.